Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take your source material and really get into the important details. Today, we're plunging into a truly fascinating period, the Mughal Empire. Specifically, we're looking at the reigns of three really key emperors. That's Jahangir, Shah Jahan, and Aurangzeb. So roughly early 17th to early 18th century.
Right. And our mission today is, well, to guide you through their reigns. It's quite a story. We'll look at the monumental achievements, the things that really shaped the subcontinent, but also the profound challenges they faced, things that tested the empire itself. We're talking conquests, but also cultural highs, those shifts in religious policies, sometimes pretty dramatic shifts. And even, the subtle beginnings of decline, it's all drawn from the historical accounts you've shared with us.
Exactly. This isn't just going to be dates and battles, although, there are definitely some of those. It's more about getting a feel for the personalities, how power actually worked, and maybe some of those unexpected twists that make history so, interesting. Okay, let's get into it. So we start our deep dive with Jahangir. He takes the throne in 1605 AD. He was Akbar's only surviving son, so his succession, it happened in Agra, was actually pretty peaceful, relatively speaking, and he immediately took this rather grand title, Jahangir, which means what? Holder of the world.
Holder of the world, yeah. Quite a statement.
Yeah.
And he certainly started off intending to hold it justly. Right away, he set about putting in place some administrative reforms. He laid out these 12 specific rules, things like, making highways safer, getting rid of certain local taxes, cesses, prohibition on alcohol, protection against people just seizing property forcibly, even banning animal slaughter, especially cows, on certain days. It shows a real focus, initially at least, on public welfare.
Yeah, and despite, all his complexities, Jahangir really pushed this image of being the just. There's that famous story about the bell he supposedly fixed outside his court so anyone could ring it for justice. It's a powerful symbol, that idea of direct access to the emperor. No wonder they called him Jahangir the Just, right?
Absolutely. And that image definitely helped him cement his authority early on. But like you said, complexities. History's never simple, is it? You have to balance that image of justice with something much darker.
The execution of Guru Arjan Dev. He was the fifth Sikh guru. The background there is the guru had apparently sheltered Prince Khusrau, Jahangir's own son, when Khusrau revolted. This really angered Jahangir. He imposed a huge fine. The guru refused to pay it, and that led to his torture and ultimately his death. This wasn't just a cruel act. It had massive long-term consequences. It basically estranged the Sikhs from the Mughals permanently, created this rift that would just keep growing.
So while he's dealing with all this internal stuff, law, religion, family, what's happening at the borders, was he managing the empire's military side effectively? Militarily?
Well, it was a mixed bag. Some notable successes, definitely some significant setbacks, too. His biggest achievement, that was probably ending the conflict with Mewar in 1615. That had dragged on for, 4 decades? A huge drain. So settling that was a major strategic win. And then in 1616, his son, Prince Khurram, who would become Shah Jahan, he conquered Ahmednagar. That's when he got the title Shah Jahan, King of the World.
Mm-hmm.
But it wasn't all victories. A big loss, a real blow, was Kandahar. They lost it to the Persians in 1622. That border region was always tricky.
Right. And while Jahangir is on the throne, there's this other figure who rises to incredible power, almost overshadowing him, you could say, Nur Jahan. Who was she exactly? How did she get so influential? Nur Jahan. Well, she was born Mer-Unisa. She was the widow of a Persian noble. Jahangir married her in 1611. First called her Nur Mahal, light of the palace, then Nur Jahan, light of the world. She was apparently very beautiful, but also incredibly intelligent, sharp political mind. And her family connections became crucial. Her daughter married one of Jahangir's sons, Prince Shahryar, and her brother, Asaf Khan, his daughter was Mumtaz Mahal, who married Prince Khurram, Shah Jahan. So this network, it put her right at the center of everything.
It's always interesting how these romantic stories pop up in history, isn't it? Like that theory that Jahangir loved Mer-Unisa before her first marriage, and maybe even had a hand in her first husband's death. Though, you're right, most historians kind of dismiss that. More legend than fact, probably.
Yeah, the evidence points more towards her own ambition and, frankly, her capability. She was extraordinarily ambitious. And for a time, she practically took over the administration. She even appeared in the Haroka-i Darshan, that's the public audience window. The emperor usually showed himself there. For her to be there, handling business openly, that was unprecedented, a massive display of power. Her name was even put on some coins. That was usually just for the emperor.
Wow. So her ambition was clearly a driving force. But did it also maybe expose some weaknesses in the system, like how easily power could be concentrated or how succession struggles could paralyze things?
That's a really good point. Yes. Well, Jahangir clearly trusted her deep involvement. It did end up being quite damaging to the empire in the long run. It showed how vulnerable the Mughal system could be to court politics, to personal ambitions, resources, focus. They get diverted from bigger issues, right? Her ambitions led straight to conflict with Prince Khurram. He revolted, though Jahangir pardoned him later. She also clashed with Muhammad Khan, a really powerful general. He revolted too. So it wasn't just about internal squabbles. It fueled civil war, created instability. It weakened the empire from the inside. A dangerous precedent.
Okay, so moving on from Jahangir's reign, that mix of justice and strife, we get to his son, Shah Jahan. His rule starts around 1628 AD, and this period, it's often called the climax of the Mughal Empire.
It certainly saw major developments. Conquest-wise, he annexed Ahmednagar in 1632. That was significant. And the Deccan states, Bijapur and Golconda, they submitted to Mughal authority in 1636 after some pressure. Up in the northwest, he actually managed to get Kandahar back briefly around 1630. But it was really costly to hold, and ultimately they lost it again to Iran in 1649, despite 3 massive campaigns trying to reclaim it. So that remained a problem area.
Still, it's amazing, isn't it? Despite these military campaigns, his era is just so famous for art and architecture. The golden age of medieval India. How did they manage both? Funding huge cultural projects and fighting wars?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It really speaks to the sheer wealth and the administrative machine the empire had at its peak. The court was incredibly opulent. Think of the Peacock Throne, the Takat House, made of reportedly over 1,000 kilos of gold, 230 kilos of precious stones, supposedly had the Kohinoor diamond in it, just staggering wealth. And the architecture, well, it's legendary. The Taj Mahal, obviously. A mausoleum for his wife, Mumtaz Mahal, all white marble, took 22 years, 20,000 workers. Marble from Makrana, it's still one of the wonders of the world. But also the Red Fort in Delhi, the Jama Masjid there too, just incredible structures.
And it wasn't only buildings, right? He supported writers, artists, musicians, painters, fostered a real cultural boom.
Absolutely, a vibrant scene. But, and it's a big but, his reign ended in utter chaos, the War of Succession. Shah Jahan got seriously ill in 1657. Now, he had apparently nominated his eldest son, Dara, to succeed him, but his other 3 sons, Shuja, Aurangzeb, and Murad, they weren't having it. They decided to fight for the throne. And the key thing here is these weren't just minor princes. They all had armies, resources, powerful supporters. It was a full-blown imperial civil war.
And the outcome, it sounds like it was brutal.
Devastating for the family and for the empire's stability. Shuja and Dar's forces were defeated early on. Ultimately, it was Aurangzeb, who was a very shrewd military commander and politician, who came out on top. He imprisoned his own father, Shah Jahan. He systematically hunted down and killed his brothers, and then declared himself emperor.
What a tragic end for Shah Jahan. To go from the height of power, building the Taj Mahal, to that, spending his last 8 years as a prisoner in Agra Fort, just looking across the river at the Taj. He died in 1666. A lonely end.
Which brings us right to Aurangzeb. He rules from 1658 all the way to 1707, often called the last great Mughal emperor. And his empire was huge, wasn't it? Covered almost the whole subcontinent. Kashmir down to the Kaveri, Kabul across to Chittagong.
Vast, yes. But Aurangzeb's reign is, well, deeply controversial, mainly because of his religious policy. He was an orthodox Sunni Muslim, and he decided to rule strictly by Islamic laws. This was a complete U-turn from Akbar's policies of tolerance. It became a policy of, frankly, persecution, discrimination, intolerance. He stopped new temples being built, ordered the destruction of some famous existing ones like Somnath, Vishwanath. He brought back the jizya tax on non-Muslims in 1679. He discriminated in customs duties, banned Hindu festivals like Diwali and Holi, and even offered incentives jobs, land for people to convert to Islam. Wow, that's a fundamental shift away from that more inclusive Mughal identity built by emperors like Akbar. It wasn't just policy, it was changing the nature of the empire. How did people react? Did it cause unrest?
Oh, absolutely. Widespread discontent led directly to major revolts. You had the Jet Rebellion in Mathura, led by figures like Gokul, Rajaram, Churaman. Then the Satnamis near Narnaul. They were actually a peaceful religious group called Mundiyas, but they revolted too, fought fiercely before being put down. And the Sikhs, this is where that earlier rift just explodes. Their 9th guru, Guru Teg Bahadur, was tortured and executed in 1675. On Aurangzeb's orders. Accused of blasphemy, his son, Guru Gobind Singh, responded powerfully. He wanted revenge, yes, but also to protect his community. He transformed the Sikhs into the Khalsa, a dedicated military brotherhood, warrior saints. Then there's the tragic story in 1704. During a siege, Guru Gobind Singh's 2 young sons, Zordiar Singh and Fateh Singh, were captured. They refused to convert to Islam and were brooked up alive. Horrific. By the time Guru Gobind Singh died in 1708, the Sikhs were a powerful, rebellious force determined to fight Mughal rule. And the Rajputs, longtime allies, pillars of the empire, relations soured badly. Aurangzeb clashed with the Marwar after Raja Jaswant Singh died, refused to recognize his son Ajit Singh. This pushed Marwar and Mewar together against him. They fought for years until Aurangzeb finally had to back down and accept Ajit Singh. These weren't just isolated incidents. It was a pattern of resistance sparked by his policies.
And while all this is happening, down in the Deccan, another power is really coming into its own, the Marathas. Their story, especially with Shivaji, feels like a real turning point, doesn't it?
Absolutely pivotal. The Marathas were already gaining ground, but Shivaji, he was something else. Born in 1627, he was an incredibly able leader, charismatic too. He organized the Marathas, captured key forts, Toran, Chakan, Purandar, built the foundation for an independent kingdom. His clashes with the Mughals and Bijapur became legendary. Remember Afzal Khan? The Bijapur general sent to capture him in 1659. In that famous meeting, Shivaji killed him with a hidden weapon, tiger claws, turned the tables completely. Then he took on Shaista Khan, Aurangzeb's governor in the Deccan, led a daring night raid right into his camp in 1663. Wounded Shaista Khan, killed his son. These were incredibly bold moves against Mughal authority.
Okay, so these successes must have seriously worried Aurangzeb. He couldn't ignore Shivaji anymore. He sent a massive army under Raja Jai Singh, right, to crush him. There was the Treaty of Purandar in 1665. Shivaji lost some forts. And then the next year, 1666, Jai Singh convinces Shivaji to visit the imperial court in Agra. That didn't go well, did it? Humiliating treatment, ranked low, arrested when he protested, but then he escapes. That's like something out of a movie.
It really is a legendary escape. And after that, the Mughals never really got the upper hand against him again. Shivaji just consolidated his power, crowned himself Chhatrapati, King of Kings, in 1674, a clear declaration of independence. By the time he died, quite young actually, in 1680, he'd carved out a large, strong kingdom right in the heart of Mughal territory, a massive challenge. So Aurangzeb then decided he had to go south himself. He launched this huge personal campaign in the Deccan from 1681, determined to crush the Marathas. Didn't work out as planned initially, so he shifted focus. He annexed the remaining Deccan sultanates Bijapur in 1686, Golconda in 1687. Thought that would help. And he did capture and kill Sambhaji, Shivaji's son, in 1689. But here's the irony. Destroying Bijapur and Golconda actually backfired. They'd acted as a kind of buffer against the Marathas. With them gone, the Marathas had a freer hand. So from around 1700 to 1707, Aurangzeb, old and sick, was just stuck down there. 20 years in the Deccan fighting this endless draining war against the Marathas.
It really sounds like that analogy people make with Napoleon's Spanish ulcer, that long, unwinnable war that just bleeds you dry. Didn't historian V.A. Smith say something like, the Deccan was not only the grave of his body, but also of his empire? The Deccan ulcer. That conflict must have just consumed everything: money, manpower, attention.
It absolutely did. He died down there in Aurangabad in 1707, completely worn out. And his being away from the north for so long, plus the sheer cost of the Deccan Wars, it caused chaos back up north, weakened the central government massively. So yes, his religious policies created enemies everywhere, and this relentless, ultimately failed Deccan campaign. They were key factors in why the Mughal Empire started to decline after him. The strain was just too much.
Right. We've covered a lot of the political ups and downs, the wars, the big decisions. But like we said earlier, this era wasn't just about power struggles. It was also this incredible period for culture. Let's switch gears a bit and talk about that amazing legacy in arts and letters.
Yeah, absolutely. Mughal architecture especially developed this really unique style, didn't it? Blending Persian ideas with Indian traditions. Babur didn't leave much, a couple of mosques maybe. Humayun started the Dinpana Palace. But Akbar, he was a huge builder. His wife built Humayun's tomb in Delhi, that beautiful garden tomb, kind of a precursor to the Taj. And his really big project, that was the new capital, Fatehpur Sikri.
Yes.
Huge undertaking.
Yeah.
He had the Diwan-i-Am, Jodhabai's palace, Panch Mahal.
The big mosque, Jami Masjid.
Exactly. And that massive gate, the Buland Darwaza, that was for the Gujarat conquest, quite the statement. He also built Agra Fort. Jahangir finished Akbar's tomb and built Itmadullah's tomb. That was the first big one, entirely in white marble.
Yeah.
But yeah, as we said, Shah Jahan's reign was the peak. Red Fort, Jama Masjid in Delhi, Moti Masjid in Agra, and the Taj Mahal. Unbeatable.
And that blending of styles, it wasn't just buildings, was it? Mughal painting, too, that mix of Persian and Indian influence.
That's right. Under Akbar, you had painters like Daswant, illustrating the Mahabharata, the Raznama. Abdus Samad decorated Fatehpur Sikri. They were really masters of book illustration, like in the Akbarnama. So detailed. Jahangir, he supposedly had a real artist's eye, could tell who painted what, even in a group work. So Thomas Rowe mentioned something about that. Shah Jahan maybe appreciated painting a bit less than his father, but his son, Dara Shikoh, was a big patron, and even Aurangzeb, who famously disliked painting. The art didn't just die out, it kind of moved to regional courts, kept going.
Okay, and music. How did that fare under the Mughals?
Music really flourished under Akbar. His court had like over 30 musicians listed in the Aini Akbari. Tansen was the most famous, of course. Akbar himself apparently played the nakara, a type of drum, and Jahangir and Shah Jahan, it continued that patronage. Music was a big part of court life.
Until Aurangzeb, right? There's that famous story. He hated art and literature, basically banned musicians from his court, and they staged that mock funeral procession for music itself. When Aurangzeb asked what was going on, they said music had died under his rule, so they were burying it. And his reply was something like, bury it deep so it never comes back. So definitive. It really shows his mindset, doesn't it? How did that translate to, say, literature?
It does show his worldview, absolutely. But interestingly, while music got the axe, other literary forms still managed to thrive, maybe just with less imperial cheerleading. Persian literature did really well under the Mughals generally. Abul Fazl's Ain Akbari, Akbarnama, indispensable historical sources from Akbar's time. Other historians too, like Nizamuddin Ahmad Badani. And there was that really important trend under Akbar of translating Sanskrit works into Persian. The Mahabharata, Ramayana, Panchatantra, Abul Fazl, Badani, Faitzi were involved. That continued under Jahangir too. And Hindi literature had a kind of golden age as well. Tulsidas wrote the Ramcharitamanas, the story of Lord Rama, the anecdote. Akbar supposedly invited him to court, but Tulsidas politely declined. Said something like, what would I do at Fatehpur Sikri? Sirdas wrote Sursaga about Lord Krishna. Lots of Akbar's courtiers wrote Hindi poetry. Birbal Rajaman Singh, Raj Bhagwan Das, up to Rahim Khani Khanna was a famous Hindi poet too. And Malik Muhammad Jayasi wrote Padmavat. Sundar wrote Sundar Shringar, got the title Makavi Rai from Shah Jahan. So yeah, a really rich literary period across different languages.
So we've covered almost 2 centuries here, from Jahangir, trying to balance justice and control, to Shah Jahan, with that incredible architectural legacy but ending in family tragedy. And finally, Aurangzeb, ruling this vast empire but stretching it thin with his policies and those endless wars.
Yeah, and if you connect the dots, you really see it. How individual rulers, their choices, their beliefs, especially on religion and war, how profoundly that impacts an entire empire. You see the peak, but you also see the seeds of decline being sown. It's that complex mix, isn't it? Power, personality, culture, and how easily things can unravel when they're out of balance.
It definitely makes you think, considering how much individual beliefs and ambitions shaped these empires back then, what parallels could you, listening now, maybe draw with leaders and nations today? How much do those factors still shape our world? Something to ponder.
Well, we hope this deep dive has given you a richer, maybe more nuanced picture of this really pivotal time in history.
Thank you for joining us on The Deep Dive.